Sleep is the only place you can go where the lie of continuity is forgiven. But tonight, you won't be sleeping, you'll be unraveling, because you've never once stopped to question whether the you that dreams is the same one that wakes. The ship that carried you here. You imagine that you began once. A cry, a birth, a name. You trace your existence in a line, a childhood, a memory, a story you call your life. But stories, by their nature, require authors, and if you are the author of your own identity, let me ask, what part of you has remained constant enough to do the writing? Let us begin with the Ship of Theseus, a simple thought experiment, so ancient it predates the fall of empires. The ship, we are told, sailed valiantly for years before its planks began to rot. Piece by piece, they were replaced. First a board, then a beam, then the mast itself, and one day nothing original remained. Yet it was still called Theseus's ship. Was it still the same ship? Now imagine each of those planks carefully stored and reassembled elsewhere, a perfect reconstruction using the original materials. Which one, then, is real? Which one is the imposter? The one with continuity or the one with origin? Now apply the same decay to yourself. Every cell in your body, except some neurons, has been replaced over the years. Your bones renew, your skin sheds, your taste buds regenerate every 2 weeks. Even your memories are reconstructions, rewritten each time you recall them. There is no part of you that has not been dismantled and replaced, and yet you cling to the illusion of a single, unbroken self, your own ship of Theseus drifting across the years. Which version of you do you mourn when you say, "I miss who I used to be"? Neuroscience offers no stable soul to rescue you. Studies in split-brain patients, such as those performed by Roger Sperry and Michael Gazzaniga, revealed something deeply unsettling. Sever the corpus callosum, the bridge between the hemispheres, and you create 2 consciousnesses inside one skull. 2 minds. 2 selves, independently perceiving, reacting, answering. Which one is you? Both. Neither. Your brain is not a unit. It's a confederation of competing modules, loosely coordinated by a narrator that didn't even ask for the job. The inner monologue you call you is simply a storytelling reflex, retroactively patching over decisions made by unconscious processes. Benjamin Libet's experiments in the 1980s revealed that your brain initiates actions before you consciously decide to perform them. You are not the origin of your will, you are merely its spectator, desperately narrating. Let us rewind. You were not born with identity. It was assigned: gender, name, nationality. You were embedded in language before you could resist it. Jacques Lacan spoke of the mirror stage, that moment in early infancy when the child sees their reflection and begins to believe in the illusion of a unified self. Before the mirror, there was only fragmented sensation. After the mirror, a prisoner of image. Your memories are no sanctuary either. Elizabeth Loftus and her colleagues have demonstrated repeatedly how easy it is to implant false memories. How simple it is to make you swear that you saw things you never saw, loved people who never existed, wept for events that never occurred. Your past is not a record. It's a collage, curated by bias and revised by trauma. You build a temple of selfhood out of unreliable stones, and then you worship it. In Buddhist philosophy, there is no self. Only the illusion of self, a process called anatta. In David Hume's terms, the self is nothing but a bundle of perceptions, fleeting and unconnected. He searched for the core of his being and found only sensations in flux, like a river with no riverbed. The same applies to you. You are not a being, you are a becoming. Even identity through time is a construct. Julian Jaynes proposed that ancient humans didn't possess consciousness as we do now. They heard commands as voices of gods, the bicameral mind. The narrative self, he argued, only emerged recently in history. So if the I did not exist a few millennia ago, when exactly did you begin? Who exactly was born? Let's dig further. Your DNA, often invoked as the blueprint of you, is not uniquely yours. You share 99.9% of your genes with every other human being. You share more than 98% with a chimpanzee, more than 50% with a banana, and within your body live more microbial cells than human ones. Your self is a colony of bacteria, archaea and viruses held loosely in the shape of a person. The you defend is a biological myth wrapped in cultural tape. But you feel real, don't you? You feel indivisible, you feel continuity, authorship, presence. That feeling is precisely the trick. Dennett called it the center of narrative gravity, a fiction the brain constructs to organize experience. Not because it is true, but because it is useful. The illusion of self is adaptive. But so is camouflage. So is lying. So is mimicry. What then is you, if not a lie the brain tells itself to survive? You wake each morning to a body made of other organisms, driven by unconscious will, justified by invented memory, housed in a skull where half of you doesn't even know what the other half is doing. You dress the corpse in routines, teach it pronouns, and feed it memories. But none of it answers the question, if your entire sense of self can be replaced, rerouted, surgically divided, genetically shared, historically absent, philosophically denied, and biologically disintegrated, then who is asking this question right now? Let us rewind. The history that remembers you. You believe the past is fixed, that history is a record etched into the stone of time, but you've never touched that stone, have you? You've only ever seen its shadows, reinterpreted through textbooks, retellings, reconstructions. You believe you emerged from history, but what if history emerged from you? Let's begin with a simple deception. Memory is not a recording, it is a reconstruction. This is not poetic metaphor, it is neurological fact. Every time you recall an event, your brain rewrites it, edits it, reshapes it with new context, and then saves that version for the future. It is not the event you remember, it is the memory of the last memory. Like photocopying a photocopy. Eventually, the image decays, yet you swear its truth. Apply this to culture, apply it to history. Every textbook you ever read was curated, authored, approved. Historians, like all humans, possess bias. They write with the ink of power, not impartiality. Entire civilizations vanished, not from natural disaster, but from deliberate erasure. Ask the indigenous peoples whose languages were outlawed. Ask the victims of book burnings, the survivors of colonization, the authors silenced before they were ever heard. Can you name a single event from ancient history that was not filtered through at least 5 levels of interpretation? Oral tradition, scribe, translation, revision, ideology. Even your calendar lies to you. Year 0 is an invention. BCE and CE mark not the birth of Christ, but the birth of a worldview. Time itself has been colonized. You live inside a chronology you never consented to. Consider the Dark Ages. For centuries, Western historians labeled this period as intellectually void, a dead zone. But that narrative collapsed under scrutiny. The Islamic Golden Age flourished then. Africa and Asia saw scientific and philosophical growth. So why the darkness? Because the European historians couldn't see beyond their own shadow. History is not what happened. History is what survived. In 1929, during renovations of the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, a map was found, the Piri Reis map. It depicted parts of South America and Antarctica, centuries before those continents were discovered by Europeans. Some of it was eerily accurate. How could a 16th century mapmaker chart territories with such detail? Mainstream historians dismissed it. They had to. It threatened the linear timeline, it punctured the myth of progress, and so it was buried in silence. But it exists, it is real, and so are the things it discredits. What else have you accepted as truth because you were taught it early enough? In psychology, there's a term, primacy effect, the tendency to better remember the first items in a sequence. The first explanations you hear become foundational. Every new fact must be bent to fit that foundation, even if it contradicts it. That's not learning. Think about it. If you were born in a different country, under a different religion, a different ideology, a different set of heroes and villains, you would feel just as certain about those stories as you do now. Does that not terrify you? It should. Even the concept of civilization is propaganda. You are told that history is a steady climb from barbarism to enlightenment. But look closer. Ancient societies practiced advanced surgery, created star maps, built structures we still cannot fully explain. The Antikythera mechanism, discovered in a shipwreck dated around 100 BCE, is a mechanical computer more complex than anything believed possible at the time. Historians didn't know how to classify it, so they filed it away as an anomaly. Progress, it seems, is measured by what we are willing to forget. Take Göbekli Tepe, a vast megalithic structure in modern-day Turkey, built over 11,000 years ago, before the invention of writing, agriculture, or the wheel. It shatters the established narrative that humans were primitive until they settled. Here, hunter-gatherers constructed temples with astronomical precision. Then they buried them, deliberately. Why? No one knows. Even science, your supposed bastion of objectivity, is riddled with the politics of memory. Paradigms shift not because of evidence, but because the old guard dies. Thomas Kuhn called it a scientific revolution, not a gentle evolution of thought, but a violent upheaval, where old theories are overthrown, and the past is repainted to match the new dogma. The Earth was once flat, then round, then the center, then a speck. Reality did not change, but our stories about it did. And each time, we believed we had finally arrived at truth. You are the product of a narrative that constantly edits itself and calls that edit truth. How many lies must be sanded down into consensus before they earn the title fact? Now zoom inward. Your personal history too is curated. You forget the mundane, exaggerate the dramatic, edit the painful. Your memories are warped by mood, identity, need. You've told the same stories so many times, you no longer know if they happened that way, or if they ever happened at all. You believe in the continuity of your history because forgetting that belief would annihilate the illusion of self. This is why trauma is so destabilizing. It breaks narrative. It reminds you that memory is not linear, identity is not stable, and the past is not safely behind you. It intrudes uninvited because the mind is not built to store truth, it is built to survive. So ask yourself, what is a history that exists only because it flatters the present? How many of your ancestors were erased, their stories unrecorded, their names unwritten, because they did not fit the version of the world that survived? What if the only thing that differentiates a hero from a heretic is who won? Even your family stories, the ones passed down from grandparents, mythologized in dinner table rituals, are not safe. They are patched holes. Nostalgia is not a memory, it is anesthesia. And yet, you swear you know where you came from. You swear you know your place in a timeline, a civilization, a meaning. But if the record is unreliable, and the narrator is biased, and the archive is curated, and the memories are corrupted, and the heroes are invented, and the facts are selected, then what exactly is it that you remember? The lie of the present moment. You think you're here now, reading this, breathing, existing. You feel it. Your body in the room, the now unfolding like a river you ride on without question. But what you call now is not a moment. It's a delay, a reconstruction, a hallucination stitched together from fragments that never truly arrive. Let's begin with the speed of light, the cosmic speed limit. 299,792,458 meters per second. It seems instant, but it's not. When you look at the stars, you're seeing light that left them years ago, centuries ago, sometimes before humanity had language. The light from the Andromeda galaxy takes over 2 million years to reach your eyes. You never see the present, you only ever see the past projected forward. Now shrink that scale. When you see another person's face, when you hear a voice, when you feel your own hand, those signals travel, they take time. Neurons must fire, nerves must relay, your brain must interpret. You are living, always in a perceptual lag, a delay. The present is gone before you become aware of it. Your brain compensates by guessing what's happening now, based on what was happening a moment ago. In experiments like those by David Eagleman, subjects perceived actions before they occurred because the brain tries to pre-align incoming data with its expectations. You don't live in real time, you live in predicted time. The present is a story your brain writes after the fact and insists was happening all along. This isn't metaphor, it's physics and neuroscience. Einstein dismantled the idea of a universal now. Time, he showed, is relative. A clock on a moving train ticks differently than one on the platform. GPS satellites must adjust for both special and general relativity to give accurate positions. Time bends, time warps, time dilates. There is no singular present, no unified now. What feels like the same moment to you and someone else is, quite literally, not. The philosopher Julian Barber takes this further. He proposes that time itself doesn't exist. What we experience as the passage of time is simply our consciousness jumping from one static configuration of the universe to another. Nows, he calls them, snapshots, each complete, timeless, eternal. We feel the illusion of motion only because we remember a past configuration. You think you are moving forward, but you might be skipping frames in a cosmic slideshow. And what of your experience of continuity? The unbroken you that carries through time. Split brain experiments prove that consciousness can be divided. But consider this. In 2014, researchers at the University of Sussex used brain scans to show that our sense of a continuous self is merely an emergent property of neuronal synchrony. When those rhythms are disrupted by trauma, by drugs, by sleep deprivation, identity fractures. The self unravels, not dramatically but quietly, imperceptibly. You think this moment is your anchor. You think now is where you return to. But you are always arriving too late. Even your senses are betrayers. Sound is slower than light. Touch is slower still. Your brain must synchronize these inputs, or else the world would fragment into a meaningless cascade of asynchronous signals. It cheats, it edits. It overlays illusions of simultaneity. When you clap your hands, the sound seems instant, but it's not. You feel the slap, hear the sound, see the motion. And your brain delays the fastest inputs to match the slowest. You do not perceive reality. You perceive a simulation rendered after all the data has been buffered and stitched together. In this sense, your mind is not a witness to reality, it is a forger. The philosopher Daniel Dennett proposed the multiple drafts model of consciousness, that your brain processes parallel narratives of experience and then selects one to present to you. The you that sees, that knows, that feels, is a post-processed artifact. Not a commander, but an afterthought. The implications are terrifying. You cannot trust that what you feel now is real, because now is already gone. Think of déjà vu, that eerie sensation that this moment has already happened. It occurs when the brain misroutes short-term memory into long-term storage, making the present feel like the past. Your timeline slips, you glimpse the machinery, you panic. And then you forget. Or temporal binding, where the brain links two events in time, even if they didn't occur together. Your consciousness smooths inconsistencies to preserve the lie of linear time. You are not experiencing time, you are maintaining a narrative of time. Now ask, what happens when that narrative breaks? Consider patients with temporal lobe epilepsy. In certain seizures, they report timelessness. The dissolution of sequence, events no longer happen before or after, only all at once. Some describe it as terrifying, others call it divine, but all agree it is not human, because your humanity depends on sequence. Memory, intention, identity all require the illusion of flowing time. Without it, you are not you. You are static, you are nothing. Even dreams reveal the fragility of time. You experience hours in seconds. Scenes collapse into each other. You wake up believing it made sense. Only later do you realize it was incoherent. Your sleeping mind accepts temporal absurdity without question. So why do you think your waking mind is any different? Look around you. This room, this screen, this heartbeat. None of it is now. All of it is after. The light bouncing off your surroundings reached your eyes nanoseconds ago. The sounds you hear started before you registered them. The thoughts you're having, and yet, you swear it feels real. But if now is already gone by the time you know it, then where are you? Really? The science that cannot save you. You were told that science is your salvation, that through reason and method, the world becomes knowable, predictable, controllable, that the chaos of existence can be tamed with equations. But you never noticed, did you, that the deeper science peers into the fabric of reality, the less real it all begins to look. You imagine atoms as tiny spheres, orderly building blocks of the universe. This is a child's diagram. There are no spheres. There are only probability clouds, flickers of maybe. The closer you look at matter, the less matter exists. Electrons do not orbit nuclei like planets. They exist in a smeared uncertainty, described not by location but by likelihood. Quantum mechanics, our most precise scientific theory, doesn't even attempt to tell you what is, only what might be, and with what odds. Werner Heisenberg's uncertainty principle tells you this: the more precisely you know a particle's position, the less you can know about its momentum, and vice versa. Certainty is forbidden, not because of technological limitation, but because reality does not allow it. You are built from particles that can never fully reveal themselves. And then there's the double-slit experiment. Fire electrons through two slits in a barrier, and they form an interference pattern, a wave pattern, on the screen behind. They behave as if they go through both slits, a single particle interfering with itself. But observe it. Place a detector to measure which slit it passes through, and the interference disappears. The electron behaves like a particle again. One slit, one path. Observation changes outcome. Reality only behaves when you're not looking. When you observe it, it collapses into something else. Is this science, or is this sorcery? Let's fall deeper. Physicist Eugene Wigner went further. If consciousness causes collapse, then reality does not exist without a mind to observe it. The universe may be participatory. Your perception is not passive. It is a condition of existence. So which came first, mind or matter? Let's fall deeper. Quantum entanglement. Two particles become linked such that the state of one instantly determines the state of the other, regardless of distance. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance. He was disturbed by it. It defied locality. It broke causality. And yet it's been experimentally verified again and again. Something you do here affects something there instantly. Not at light speed, instantly. This is not conjecture. It's replicable fact. But you're told not to worry, that this doesn't allow communication faster than light. That causality is preserved. That's not comfort. That's a patch. Quantum field theory, the most successful theory ever created, describes all particles as excitations in underlying fields. But even these fields are not things. They are abstract descriptions, mathematical structures, nothing concrete, nothing touchable. Your body is not made of matter. It is made of vibrating information. And what of time? General relativity warps it with mass. The more gravity, the slower time flows. Place a clock on a mountain, and it ticks faster than one at sea level. Place one on the edge of a black hole, and time nearly stops. Time is not a constant. It is elastic. If time can stretch, bend, pause, then what is before? What is after? What is a life in a universe where time is a surface and not a river? You might cling to the Big Bang, our grand origin story, but it too is collapsing. Time and space did not explode into being. They were being, and the deeper we look, the more unclear it becomes what preceded that singularity, if before even makes sense in such a context. And dark matter, dark energy. Together they compose 95% of the known universe, and yet we cannot see them, touch them, test them. They are inferred, ghosts, fudges on the ledger of the cosmos. The universe behaves as though they exist, but we cannot find them. You live in a world that is mostly invisible and governed by forces you cannot detect. Even constants, supposed anchors of physical reality, might not be constant. Some cosmologists suggest the fine structure constant, which determines the strength of electromagnetic interaction, may have shifted slightly over cosmic time. If the constants change, what is left to hold? The more science answers, the less you know. The more precise the microscope, the more the image fractures. Richard Feynman once said, "If you think you understand quantum mechanics, you don't understand quantum mechanics." But still you believe science is cumulative, that we build upon knowledge like bricks in a tower, each theory stacking upward. No one told you about the abyss beneath. Thomas Kuhn's The Structure of Scientific Revolutions made this clear. Science doesn't progress through refinement, it progresses through collapse, through crisis. When old models can no longer explain the anomalies, they are discarded, replaced. Reality is rewritten. Ptolemy's spheres were beautiful. They made predictions, they worked, and they were wrong. Newton's gravity explained the universe, until it didn't. Now even Einstein's fabric of space-time frays at the edges, at the quantum scale, where gravity refuses to cooperate. The unification of physics, what scientists call the theory of everything, remains elusive. String theory, M theory, quantum gravity, all elegant, all incomplete. Decades of brilliance, and still no consensus. Your reality runs on patch notes. Even mathematics, your most sacred abstraction, contains rot. Gödel's incompleteness theorems proved that within any formal system complex enough to contain arithmetic, there will always be true statements that cannot be proven within that system. You cannot know everything, and worse, you can never even prove that you could. The very language of logic has holes, and those holes are not fixable. And still you sleep at night believing the world is knowable, that scientists somewhere, in some lab, are building a map that will finally explain it all. But if the map keeps erasing itself, if the territory keeps warping every time we look more closely, if the tools of perception are infected with the limits of perception itself, then what exactly is science describing? And if the universe cannot be fully known, then what exactly is it that you're trusting when you say it's real? The mirror of the mind. You assume that because you can think, you must be real. That thought itself is proof of being. You inherited this idea from Descartes. Cogito, ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. But what if thought is not a foundation but a trap? What if the voice in your head is not the origin of self but the final illusion? Let's peel it back. You hear thoughts, don't you? A monologue, constant and unrelenting. The voice narrates, judges, remembers, fears. It argues with itself. You identify with this voice. You call it you. But who is listening to it? Split-brain experiments gave us a glimpse behind the curtain. When the corpus callosum is severed, the two hemispheres of the brain cease to communicate. In such patients, the left hemisphere, the verbal side, continues to speak, unaware that the right hemisphere is silently performing actions based on different information. One body, two minds, one speaks, one acts. In one case, a patient's right hemisphere was shown a provocative image, and the left hemisphere, which hadn't seen it, invented a false reason for the emotional response. A lie confidently believed. The narrator doesn't know. It rationalizes. This is not an anomaly. This is how your mind works now. Your conscious thoughts are explanations layered over unconscious decisions. In Libet's experiments, the brain initiated motor activity hundreds of milliseconds before the subject chose to act. Your decision is an echo of something that already happened. You are not the author, you are the publicist. And what is thought, really? Electrochemical pulses across billions of synapses, neurons firing in patterns. Those patterns become language. Language becomes narrative. Narrative becomes identity. But neurons don't think. They respond. They react to input, stimuli, hormones, trauma, memory. You are a cascade of conditioned responses in an exquisitely complex meat machine. There is no ghost, just a simulation of one. So where does the you reside? Not in your body. Phantom limb syndrome proves this. Amputees feel pain in limbs that are no longer there. The body is a suggestion, not a certainty. Your brain holds a map of the body, and that map can be wrong, not in your thoughts. Meditation traditions and neuroscience agree, thoughts arise unbidden. You do not create them, you observe them. They flicker up uninvited like dreams during waking life. Not in your memories. We've already seen how easily those are altered, distorted, rewritten. And certainly not in your emotions. Those are biochemical storms, shifting by the hour, the meal, the hormone cycle, the moonlight. Then where? You may say consciousness, awareness. But even that fails under scrutiny. Consider blind sight. Patients with damage to the visual cortex report being blind in certain areas of their vision. But when asked to guess whether a light is present in the blind field, they're correct more often than chance. They see without seeing, perception without awareness. Or consider anosognosia, patients paralyzed on one side of their body who insist they can move. They confabulate. They invent stories. They are sincere. Their awareness is broken, not damaged, rewired. Their consciousness is not gone, it's misinformed. Or Capgras delusion, a condition in which someone becomes convinced a loved one has been replaced by an imposter. They see the same face, hear the same voice, but something feels wrong. The emotional connection has been severed. And that feeling overrides logic. You think you're immune. You think your awareness is stable. Every night you dream, an entire reality, complete with time, space, sensation, people, identity. You believe it until you wake. The only difference is how coherent the story feels. Lucid dreamers can become aware within dreams. But even then, the dream doesn't dissolve. The illusion continues, only with the added twist that they believe they are in control. Just like you believe now. But what if waking life is simply a more consistent dream? A lucid hallucination with tighter rules? The brain doesn't perceive reality, it constructs it. Vision is an interpretation. Sound is a translation. Your entire sensory world is a neural rendering inside a sealed skull. You have never seen the world, only your brain's model of it, and this model can be hacked. Psychedelics, LSD, psilocybin, DMT, disrupt the brain's default mode network. That network is correlated with self-referential thinking, the ego. When disrupted, users report ego death. The sense of I dissolves. And yet experience continues. Awareness persists. People report becoming sound, light, pattern, space. No self, still consciousness. This implies the I is not a requirement for awareness, that your entire sense of being may just be a filter, a narrowing of a broader, more chaotic consciousness, and the filter can malfunction. In depersonalization disorder, individuals feel detached from themselves, like watching their life from outside their body. In derealization, the world feels fake, dreamlike, unreal, common in trauma, anxiety, even boredom. You might have felt it. The sudden chill. Is any of this real? You shake it off. You return to the script. But the glitch lingers. You believe you are a singular being, but neuroscience, psychology, philosophy, each peels away another layer of that illusion. There is no homunculus. So let me ask, if every thought you have is conditioned, every perception filtered, every memory corrupted, every emotion biochemical, every decision post-justified, and every experience potentially a hallucination, then who or what is thinking you? The architecture of nothing. You believe in space, the room around you, the floor beneath you, the air you call emptiness. You move through it, measure it, trust in its silence. But space is not the neutral canvas you think it is. It is not a background. It is not empty. It is not still. It is a liar. Let's begin with the void. You were told that space is mostly empty, that between stars, between atoms, between particles, there is vast nothingness. But what is nothing? In quantum field theory, even the vacuum is not truly empty. It seethes with fluctuations, particles popping in and out of existence, borrowing energy from the void, then vanishing before they can be observed. This is not theory, it is observable. Virtual particles affect measurable quantities, like the Casimir effect. Two uncharged metal plates, placed nanometers apart in a vacuum, attract each other, not because of gravity or magnetism, but because the vacuum itself pushes them together. Emptiness exerts force. Nothingness has texture. So what is the void, if it can push? You may say space is where matter exists, but Einstein showed us space is not passive. It bends, it stretches, it curves around mass. This curvature is gravity. You do not fall to the earth. You follow the warping of the space around it. Space tells matter how to move. Matter tells space how to curve. They are locked in recursive feedback. So what happens when matter disappears? Space persists, but not as absence, as possibility. Even when stripped of matter, space retains structure. It has geometry. It has energy. The cosmological constant, dark energy, is not a thing in space. It is a property of space. It drives the acceleration of the universe's expansion. The more space there is, the more space is created. Reality is stretching itself apart at increasing speed. You are floating in a void that is actively fleeing from itself. But it gets worse. At the Planck scale, around 10 to -3 cubed 50,000 meters, space ceases to be smooth. It becomes grainy, discrete, foam-like. Space-time itself begins to jitter, to bubble. The smooth illusion of geometry disintegrates into chaos. This is not science fiction. This is loop quantum gravity, one of our best candidates for unifying physics. If true, then what you perceive as space is not continuous. It is quantized, made of indivisible units, pixels of existence. Your world is not a fluid, it is a lattice, and you cannot perceive the lattice because your senses evolved for survival, not truth. In 2016, cognitive scientists like Donald Hoffman proposed the interface theory of perception. It states that evolution does not favor accurate representations of reality. It favors useful ones. Just as icons on a desktop don't show you the transistors in the hard drive, your perceptions don't show you the structure of the universe. They show you a metaphor. You do not see space. You see an interface. The world you move through, the room you sit in, the air you breathe, is not how it is. It is how it looks when filtered through a brain built for reproduction and death. And it is astonishingly easy to warp. You have depth perception because of binocular vision. Two eyes, slightly apart, give two perspectives. Your brain merges them. But even this can be tricked. Stereograms, those magic eye images, show how easily your brain invents depth from flatness. VR environments can induce motion sickness because the eyes perceive motion, but the inner ear does not. The result? Nausea. Dissonance between maps of space. You believe your body occupies space, but body schema is flexible. The rubber hand illusion demonstrates this. A subject sees a rubber hand being stroked, while their real hand is hidden and stroked in synchrony. Soon, they feel sensation in the rubber hand. Their brain adopts it. Ownership of space is negotiable. Where then do you end? The philosopher Merleau-Ponty argued that space is not a container, but a lived experience. That perception is not observation, but embodiment. You don't perceive space, you enact it. You fold yourself into it by moving through it. The room only exists because you are in it. And what of directions? Up, down, forward, behind. These are local. On Earth, gravity tells you which way is down. In space, there is no down. Astronauts spin freely. Orientation becomes arbitrary. Up is not up. North is not north. Everything you navigate by is reference, not reality. Even coordinates fail. In relativity, simultaneity is relative. Two events can occur in different orders depending on your speed and position. Your here and now are not fixed points, they are conditional. There is no universal grid, there is no master frame. Space is not a stage, it is a shifting mesh of relations. You are not in space, you are of it. Consider the holographic principle. Theoretical physicists like Leonard Susskind and Gerard 't Hooft suggest that the entire three-dimensional universe may be a projection from two-dimensional information encoded on a boundary surface, like a hologram. Space may be emergent, not fundamental. The room around you may not truly exist in the way you feel it. It may be a reconstruction, a rendering, a downstream effect of more fundamental information. Your body may be a shadow on a higher dimensional wall, and yet you move through the world as if it were solid. You trust the ground, the doorframe, the air. You forget that atoms are mostly void. That solidity is electrical repulsion, that what you call touch is interaction at a distance. No particle ever truly touches another. You have never touched anything. You have only ever approached. And now, as you sit in this room, on this surface, you believe you are surrounded by stability, by orientation, by meaning. But if space is emergent, if distance is relational, if perception is an interface, if matter never touches, if the void pushes back, if you cannot trust emptiness, then what is it that surrounds you right now? The self that was never born. You have always believed in a beginning, not just of the world, but of you. A moment of origin, a first breath, a name assigned, a face in a mirror. You believe there was a point at which you became. But what if there was no such point? What if your identity is not born, but slowly fabricated and never completed? You think you were once a baby, that baby was you, that the memory gap between then and now is a blank chapter in a continuous story. But that baby had no language, no self-recognition, no internal monologue, no narrative continuity. That baby was not you. It was a body waiting for a story. In developmental psychology, this is not controversial. Self-awareness doesn't emerge until around 18 to 24 months of age. The mirror test, when a toddler recognizes themselves in a reflection, is the beginning of the I. Before that, there is perception, sensation, response, but no identity, just experience. You emerged not from biology, but from reflection, and reflection requires difference. You needed to see something other to invent a self. Parents, language, culture, mirrors. Without those, you would have been like the children raised in isolation, feral children lost in syntaxless time. Cases like Jeannie, discovered in the 1970s, show that without language, identity fails to crystallize. She never fully acquired speech. She never learned to say I in the way you do. Because I is a word that must be given before it can be believed. Yourself is a social artifact, and that artifact is not stable. It is constantly maintained through narration. Consider the default mode network, the part of the brain active when you are not engaged in external tasks. It lights up during daydreaming, self-referential thought, memory recall. It is the seat of the inner story. When suppressed, through deep meditation, psychedelics, or certain brain injuries, the sense of self dissolves. You can function without the I, in fact you always do. When you are in flow, immersed, absorbed, painting, running, losing yourself in music, what happens to the narrator? It goes quiet, and the world continues, the body continues, decisions are made, experience flows. The you disappears, and nothing is lost. You are not required for you to function. So then what is the self? Neurologist Antonio Damasio proposed 3 layers: the proto-self, homeostasis and body regulation, the core self, moment-to-moment awareness, and the autobiographical self, the narrative. Only the last one feels like you. The others exist in animals, even machines, but you are addicted to the third. You believe your story is your identity, and the story must be maintained. This is why you revise your past constantly. You remember selectively. You retroactively assign purpose. You erase contradictions. And still, you trust your story. You trust your preferences, your choices, your values. But these too are built from context. Studies in behavioral economics show just how malleable you are. When given identical products with different brand labels, you form different preferences. When told a wine is expensive, you rate it as tasting better, even as brain scans show increased activity in pleasure centers. You feel what you are told to feel. So which of your desires are truly yours? In the famous free will experiments, Libet found that brain activity indicating a decision to move preceded conscious awareness of that decision by several hundred milliseconds. The brain decides, the mind explains. You are not the driver, you are the passenger, narrating the journey as if it were intentional. You do not choose your thoughts, you notice them. You do not choose your desires, you discover them. You believe you are constant through time, but even the idea of you is relative. In the Ship of Theseus paradox, if you replace every plank of a ship one by one, is it still the same ship? If you rebuild it from the discarded planks, is that the real ship? Now apply the same to yourself. Every cell in your body is replaced over time. Your memories fade and are altered. Your opinions change. Your personality drifts. So what remains? Your name? Your memories? The feeling of continuity? All are fragile. All are editable. All can be taken or erased. Cases of dissociative identity disorder show selves splitting, diverging, developing entire memories, mannerisms, and preferences. Each identity believes it is real. Each one feels true, but they cannot all be you. So who are you when the body can house many? Even simple context can warp identity. In the Stanford prison experiment, ordinary people took on roles of guard or prisoner and became cruel or submissive in days. They did not pretend, they became. Identity is situational. It responds to power, to environment, to expectation. The self is not a noun, it is a verb, an ongoing act of alignment between conflicting inputs. And still, you fear death, not because of pain, but because of the annihilation of this I. You believe there is a core, a singularity, a thing that ends, but there was no singular thing that began. The you, reading this now, is not the same you that started this section. Neural connections have shifted, ideas have entered, doubt has crept in. You have changed, imperceptibly but irreversibly. If the self is always shifting, never stable, built from context and narrative and guesswork, if the I is not a source, but a symptom, if you were not born, but pieced together from mirrors, chemicals, and stories, then what exactly is it that dies? The language that binds the lie. You think with words. You dress your thoughts in language. You whisper your existence to yourself in sentences. And so you trust words. You think they are yours, that they are neutral tools. But language is not a mirror, it is a cage. Every word you know has already narrowed what you are allowed to feel, think, become. Consider this. Before you had the word blue, could you truly see it? This is not metaphor. In the Himba tribe of Namibia, there is no distinct word for blue, and in controlled studies, they struggle to distinguish blue from green. Not because their eyes are different, but because their words are. Language does not describe perception, it creates it. The same applies to time. In Hopi, an indigenous language, there are no tenses in the way you understand them. No past, no future, only a flowing present with variations of certainty. The Hopi don't say it will rain tomorrow. They say something closer to, it is likely to rain. What you call time is not universal. It is a linguistic bias. Your grammar is your metaphysics. You believe in objects, nouns, chair, tree, person. But in reality, there are only processes, matter in motion, energy transforming. The universe does not contain static entities. It contains verbs. You are not a person. You are person-ing. And language erases this motion, freezes the dance into snapshots, a lie of stillness in a world that never stops. You think you choose your words, but you were given them. You were taught the shape of things by parents, books, teachers, and each word carries not just a definition, but a world view. The word enemy, the word normal, the word God. You do not just speak a language, you are spoken by it. George Orwell understood this when he imagined Newspeak in 1984, a language designed to shrink thought itself. Remove the word freedom and the idea dies. No rebellion, no articulation, no possibility. You think this is fiction. But what about today? What happens when protest becomes unrest? When massacre becomes collateral damage? When surveillance becomes protection? Words are not neutral, they are loaded with obedience, and the more abstract the word, the deeper the trap. What is justice? What is love? What is self? These are not universal concepts. They shift across cultures, centuries, philosophies. You say the word and assume others understand you, but they never do, not fully, not truly. Every conversation is a near miss, every sentence is a compromise. You believe language helps you connect, but it mostly misfires. Think of how often you're misunderstood, not just online, in your own home. With those you love, you say, "I'm fine," when you are not. You say, "I love you," and it means something different each time. You are trapped in a vocabulary too small for your experience. And so you perform. You translate yourself into acceptable phrases, into templates. You do not speak your truth, you approximate it. Even your internal voice is a performance. Studies in psycholinguistics reveal that your inner monologue is shaped by external voices, your parents, your teachers, your culture. You mimic the tone, the rhythm, the punishments. You think you're thinking, but often you're repeating. And what of silence? You fear it, you flee it, you fill it with words, out loud, on screens, in your head. Because in silence, language dissolves. And without language, who are you? You have no name, no story, no identity, just sensation, breath, the raw terror of being without describing. That is why meditation is so hard, because to still the mind is to step outside of the prison, and the prison fights back. Thoughts rush in like guards. You're wasting time, you're doing it wrong, this is stupid. But whose voice is that, and why are you obeying it? Ludwig Wittgenstein, one of the greatest philosophers of language, wrote, "Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent." He meant that language has limits, that beyond those limits is the unsayable, the real. But you don't stay silent, you keep speaking, you keep labeling, you keep shrinking the infinite into syllables and syntax, and each label is a loss. Look at a sunset and say, "Beautiful," and already you have killed it. You have traded experience for summary. Look at a crying child and say, "Sad," and you have reduced a cosmos of feeling into 4 dead letters. Say tree, and you forget its breath, its fungal network, its time-lapse riot of growth. Say love, and you risk believing you have understood it. Every word is a tombstone, and yet you cannot stop. You live in language, you think in its rhythms, you pray in its grammar. Even your dreams are shaped by it, and when you try to escape, through art, through music, through pain, you still describe those things, afterward, with the same exhausted vocabulary. There is no outside, and this is why your thoughts are not free, because they were born in chains, chains of phonemes, chains of logic, chains of inherited meaning. You think, therefore you are, or are you only what can be spoken, and everything else has already been lost? Memory is a machine that lies. You live in the past without knowing it. Every second that defines who you are, every moment you call me, is built from memory. You don't realize how fragile that scaffold is, how easily it breaks, rewires, invents. You trust it like a photograph. But memory is not a record. It is a rewriting machine, a mirror that changes every time you look into it. You believe you remember what happened, but you remember what you last remembered. Every recall is a reconstruction. You are not playing a video file, you are painting a portrait from fragmented instructions, each time with new brushes, new lighting, new expectations. Elizabeth Loftus, a pioneer in memory research, demonstrated this with terrifying clarity, implanting false memories in test subjects, convincing them they had been lost in a mall as children when they hadn't. Details followed. Emotions followed. Tears followed. Entire imaginary histories formed around a lie suggested by an authority figure. Memory is not fragile, it is creative. Even your most precious moments, your first kiss, the death of a parent, the day you were told you were loved, have already changed. The emotion you attach to them now is not the emotion you felt then. The version you hold is infected by every telling, every retelling, every time someone else nodded or disagreed. Memory is a social object, a negotiated hallucination. Neuroscientists have traced this. Hippocampus, amygdala, prefrontal cortex. Specific pathways fire during encoding. But when you retrieve the memory, those pathways are rewired. You recall an event and it is susceptible to interference. What you ate that day, how tired you were, what you just read on the news. Then the altered version is saved over the original. Each memory is a counterfeit built atop the last counterfeit. You are a pyramid of lies you don't know you're telling. Now step deeper, consider confabulation. Patients with brain injuries, especially in Korsakoff's syndrome, will offer false explanations for their behavior. When asked why they just picked up an object, they'll say, "Because I needed it," when in fact it was placed in their hand. They're not lying, they're inventing reasons to maintain continuity. And you do this too. Every decision you make is explained after the fact. You think you choose first, then act. But your body often acts, and your mind scrambles to justify it. A neural backfill. A reverse causality. In one experiment, subjects were shown subliminal prompts and made choices without knowing why. And when asked, they offered confident explanations. You think your reasons are real, but they are performances, desperate attempts to protect the illusion that you are coherent. Now consider memory decay. Ebbinghouse's forgetting curve shows that within 24 hours, you lose more than half of what you've learned. Even profound experiences dissolve. Think of a childhood friend you swore you'd never forget. Their face is already fading, their voice gone. Your own handwriting from that age looks like someone else's because it was someone else's. But the worst part isn't forgetting, it's misremembering. Every time you reminisce with someone, you overwrite the past with consensus. Families invent shared narratives. Couples create origin stories. Nations write textbooks. Collective memory is ritualized distortion. It doesn't preserve truth, it preserves identity. And identity is threatened by ambiguity. You don't remember what happened. You remember what makes you feel like you. Even traumatic memories, which seem indelible, are shaped by suggestion. Witnesses to crimes recall false details when fed leading questions. Soldiers remember the wrong explosions. The brain prioritizes meaning over accuracy, survival over truth. But if your past isn't stable, neither is yourself. Because your identity is just a thread running through remembered experience. Cut that thread and what's left? Think of amnesia. When patients lose episodic memory, they often retain skills, vocabulary, social habits. They can talk, eat, smile, but they have no continuity, no personal story. They are strangers to themselves. So what is it that makes you you? The sum of memories, but you've lost thousands. You will lose more. Each night your brain prunes synapses. Each dream edits emotional residues. Each year facts are replaced by fictions told often enough to harden into certainty. You are a novel rewritten by an unreliable narrator, and the narrator does not know it is lying. Even your body betrays this. Muscle memory, a phrase that hides the truth. You can ride a bike, play a chord, type a sentence without recalling how you learned it. The memory is procedural, stored not as knowledge but as flow. You act before you remember. You remember through action. And some memories are stored in fear. Trauma bypasses the hippocampus, encoding directly into the amygdala. It never becomes narrative. It becomes trigger. You flinch at a scent, a phrase, a look, and have no idea why. You call it intuition, but it is the past reaching forward through the body, not the mind. Memory without memory. So if your memories lie, if your sense of self is built from decay, distortion, revision, if even your strongest recollections are woven from repetition and consensus, then what remains of you when the story breaks? Who are you if the past is not yours, but a myth you inherited, invented, and keep accidentally rewriting every time you try to remember? Time is the illusion you live inside. You believe in time. It feels linear, solid, forward-moving. You wake, you live, you sleep, you age, you die. And every tick of the clock, every memory, every wrinkle on your skin seems to prove it. Time is the stage on which everything happens.
But you have never seen time. Only change.
You conflate the two, believing that because things change, time must be flowing. But change does not require a river. It requires only difference. And difference can exist without direction. In physics, time is not a necessary forward arrow. It is a coordinate, no more sacred than width or height. In Einstein's relativity, all moments, past, present, future, exist equally. The space-time block universe. Nothing flows, nothing passes, everything just is. You do not move through time, you are fixed in it. Every moment of your life, your birth, your death, your now, is already written into the structure. You feel time moving, but physics says movement is a trick of perspective. You believe the past is gone and the future is not yet real. But both exist in the same four-dimensional fabric. You simply experience slices of it, one after the other. Like watching frames of a film, forgetting you are inside the projector. So why does time feel like it flows? Because your brain is a prediction engine. Neurologically, your sense of now is a constructed buffer. A few milliseconds of averaged perception, post-processed into a false present. There is no sharp edge of the moment. There is delay, there is compression. The now you feel is already over. You are always slightly behind the universe. When you watch a lightning storm, the flash and the sound arrive at different times, but your brain stitches them into one event. When you listen to music, it fills in gaps to create rhythm. The beat is not in the world, it is in you. You invent temporal cohesion to stay sane, but your experience of time is warped constantly. Under stress, time slows down. Not because the world changes, but because your brain takes in more data. Under anesthesia, hours vanish. Under psychedelics, seconds stretch into eternities. A dose of LSD can bend time into loops. A seizure in the temporal lobe can trap you in infinite recurrence. So which version of time is real? In dreams, you live whole lifetimes in minutes. And when you wake, you do not mourn those decades. Why? Because they were not real. Or because you only ever believed them in sequence. You assume memory proves time. But memory, as we've seen, lies. You assume cause proves time, but cause is statistical. Quantum events do not require temporal order. Some interpretations, like the transactional model, allow for backward causation. Future events affecting the past, photons deciding their path based on measurements not yet made. You say that's absurd, but the equations work. And entropy? The favorite explanation for time's arrow. Entropy increases, yes, but only statistically. The laws of physics are time-symmetric. The math doesn't care which direction you solve it in. A video of two particles colliding looks the same forward or backward. It's only when you add observers, that the direction emerges. Time is not a property of the universe, it is a property of consciousness. Now consider Julian Barbour, a theoretical physicist who suggests that time is an illusion, that there is no flow, only a vast landscape of nows. Each moment is its own complete configuration of the universe. No motion, just infinite still frames. Our experience of continuity is just a path carved by memory through these frozen states. So the world doesn't move, you believe it does. And what about free will, the sacred assumption that you stand on the present, choosing between futures? If all moments already exist, if the future is as fixed as the past, then your choices are not choices, they are coordinates. Pre-laid tracks you believe you are laying in real time. You feel uncertainty, not because the future is open, but because you are inside the loop that prevents you from seeing beyond your frame. Like a character in a novel flipping pages, unaware that the final chapter is already written. You might resist this, you say, but I can change. Yes, but even that change was built into the structure, preconditioned, predetermined, already encoded in the space-time slab. You can no more escape your timeline than you can escape your own blood. And when death comes, what is it? You think it is the end of time. But if time is not flowing, then there is no end. Your death is not a moment to reach, it is a location, a point in the structure, already existing, already complete, like a scene in a film reel, unspooling not in sequence, but in perception. If you have already died, then why are you so certain you haven't? And if every version of you in every instant exists eternally, unchanging, embedded in the space-time fabric, then who is the you that believes it is passing through? And what are you inside of right now, if not an illusion of movement through a dimension that never moves? Follow us for more paradoxes, quantum mysteries, and many more to fall asleep.